Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all my blessed beloveds out there in living and thriving land. You are watching Living and Thriving with Rustie, and I'm Rustie. I am super excited about all that's transpired. I've been traveling around the world, so to speak, talking to people about who they are, what makes them ooey gooey on the inside, and getting 5 tips and tricks as to um, what they're doing to stay ahead of the pandemic and the fear and all of that stuff that's associated with it. So it's really an exciting time here. I've been to Spain twice, I've been to England twice, I will be in Canada again, and I don't know where I'm going today because I forgot to ask, but our next guest, I want to say Felicia, but I could be pronouncing it wrong, and she will correct me. But first off, I want to ensure that you go to my website and sign up for my first free masterclass at the end of this month. It's really excited. Um, it's taking your bigger picture and breaking it down into smaller parts so that you can live your fullest potential. So that's a great thing. I will be on your own university teaching a couple of master classes this year. The radio show and the vlog series is up to 153 people around the world. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for your love and support. And this is like the absolute best job in the entire world, even though I don't get paid for it. But if I had a choice of being a mattress tester or doing this, it would be a really hard choice because this is just the greatest experience in life, is to meet people and find out what's ooey and gooey on the inside. So young lady, hello, welcome. Sorry, I'm running a couple of minutes late.
That's okay. How are you?
You know, it's beautiful. I live in Jurassic Park. I don't know if you know where I live. I live on the Gulf side of Florida, and it's perpetually sunny. We have dinosaurs everywhere. I have a hissing turtle. He's so old, he's grumpy, and he don't care. He's old enough. We've got a plethora of birds. I mean, in the morning when the sun rises and everything starts taking form, it's like a cacophony of just life. And then I do this all day.
Life is good.
Life is great.
I mean, mattress tester would be a close second, but sounds great.
Yeah, I know. That's a hard one. I do like to nap. Remember as a kid where we're like, no, I don't want to go take a nap. And now I'm 44. I'm like, hell yeah.
I hear you. I'm ready.
So did I mess up your name?
It's Felice.
Felice. Okay. I was not sure.
That's okay.
And where are you located geographically?
Well, I live in New York City, but I spend the summers on Cape Cod, and I'm actually here now, Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I came just to get out of the city. It's a little crazy right now, as I'm sure you've not seen.
Well, and I went to college in Vermont, so I've trampled Cape Cod many a days, and I always laugh because people are like, oh, there's not sharks up there. What are you talking about? I'm going, shit, what is this? They made a movie out of that.
Yeah, no,
we went to the beach 5 times.
We do have sharks. Yeah, for sure.
So tell us who you are, what you do, and what inspires you to be you.
Well, I am an author. I am a professional organizer. I'm a Holocaust educator. And I'm a motivational speaker. So I moved to New York to be a writer. And my first book was about my grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor. And in order to finish writing that book, I had a lot of different jobs. I was chief of staff to the president at Hunter College. My life was crazy. And my grandfather got cancer, and he said, come on, let's finish the book. So I said, the only way I can finish it was to quit my job. And I found a tiny apartment. And the apartment was 90 square feet. And I moved into this apartment. The low rent allowed me to quit my job. And I still had some clients I would organize their homes for. And then I finished the book, and then a video of my tiny apartment went viral around the world. And this book that I wrote, never intending to sell any copies, I just wrote it as a gift for my grandfather, figured he'd share with the family. The book started selling around the world. And before I knew it, I was now a Holocaust educator, and I was an author, and people wanted my advice now on organizing. So I wrote a book about how living in 90 square feet, which is roughly the perimeter of my Honda Accord, how living tiny made my life larger, because now I speak around the country talking about how less is so much more, and about organizing and decluttering. And you know, especially now when we're all sheltered at home, we're looking around at our homes at all the stuff we maybe never had time to read or look at, and we're saying, we don't really need it. Or now let's use it, let's read it, let's wear it, and then we don't need it. We can get rid of it.
I found that it was so uplifting and so powerful and so freeing just to get rid of all that stuff. I went from a severe poverty childhood to middle class. I mean, I created and I work really hard.
Hmm.
And then I started collecting things, and then I started collecting people, and then I messy divorce, the whole 9 yards. I lost absolutely everything, everything.
Wow.
And sitting there in my absolute nothingness gave birth to such beautifulness because um, I have love bugs that came in the house, so it scared me. Um, has opened up an opportunity for me to create Living and Thriving, which once my daughter graduates high school is actually going on the road. So I will be in a little tiny space of whatever that gets manifested. And you were just the right girl to talk to because Lord, I love it. I love the tiny house movement. I love the freedom of
Hmm.
just being able to go and have experience.
Yeah, that's what you want to collect is friendships and experiences over stuff. I mean, living in Manhattan, it's about going to shows. It's about walking down the street, walking in Central Park, seeing things, seeing performers, crazy people. It's all part of that great experience. And growing up on Cape Cod and being here now, you've got your birds and your turtle, and we walk to the ocean every day. My mom and I are walking, seeing new things. We live on the water. We go on the paddleboard in the summer, and you wake up with the birds and the light here. I mean, it's wonderful, and that's what it's about. And having the freedom, especially when you go on the road, you're not going to leave a huge mortgage at home. You don't have all that stuff you have to worry about paying for.
No,
And
and
it's
I blog, I write as well, and I have a few books coming out. And so every time I get an opportunity, I'm like, hey, would you like to donate an RV? Because
that's great.
I'm in. Donate, it could happen. You never know.
You never know. Yeah.
So I want to delve into particularly what the largest reason that I want to do on this show is because my family also has Holocaust survivors, and we're Cherokee and Jew, German Jew. And I find it kind of concerning that a lot of that history is not really being expressed as much, and I worry that once that generation passes on that it's going to kind of sit on a bookshelf somewhere. So it's nice that your grandfather shared those stories. That must have been so powerful. So can you give us an idea of what the book's about, what the book title is, and what was the most remarkable piece? Because I could only imagine it, pages of remarkable.
Yeah. So the book is called What Papa Told Me. It's right here. I'll show you the cover. Um, and I did the cover actually. It's a beautiful blue sky with just a barbed wire across because when you think about it, when they were in the camps, they might have had a beautiful day. And you think a beautiful day, you see the sun shining, the clouds, but that barbed wire reminded them that they were not free. And the book started really with me asking questions. I didn't know anything about my grandparents. My grandmother was in Auschwitz. My grandfather was in 8 different camps. I didn't know about their stories until college when I discovered that my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who I had been named after, who died before I was born, had committed suicide. They told me she had died of cancer. So I started asking questions because this was in the 90s. People didn't talk about it as much. And so I really started to ask my grandfather questions. And I think for a lot of survivors, they didn't want to talk to their kids when they came to America or wherever they went because they didn't want to burden their kids. And I think grandchildren have that buffer that we can ask questions that grandparents don't feel that responsibility to protect their grandchildren as much. And I started asking questions and I started writing it. And when I wrote about my grandmother, my grandfather had felt this relief, and he said, I want you to tell my story. And at the time, it was just going to be shared with my family. But then the book became a book, and then it just started selling. And I also was training other grandchildren of survivors to get their stories from their grandparents. And we go into schools and we talk about our grandparents' experiences because, like you said, a lot of these people aren't here now. There are only a few left. And when their stories go, we need to continue those stories so that this doesn't happen again, because all over the world now, anti-Semitism is on the rise and things are happening again. It's important to educate these young kids to know that, this can't happen again, that there, these crazy differences and the blaming of the Jewish people and all this stuff. It's hard. So learning these stories from my grandfather was, at first, I kind of took it as a journalist and I would write notes. And then it started to dawn on me that these were my family's history. This was my ancestors. This is what happened to our family, and how important it was to kind of continue those stories.
I think it's really, I mean, even today, I don't really pay attention to much of the news. I don't do commercial television. I haven't done that in 15 years. But every now and then you'll get something in your social media feed that reminds you of the vitriol that is out there. And I guess Colorado had an attack today or in the last couple of days with anti-Semitic on a synagogue. And it's kind of mind boggling to me because, again, I live in a very different world. I live in a world where people are in service, and I live with people who are reverends and rabbis and shamans and healers and seekers of the light of universe. And I can't wrap my head around that kind of behavior. It just doesn't, it's not logical. It seems so useless and purposeless. You know what I'm trying to say. It's a Rustieism day.
Right.
This is what I get for doing 5 or 6 of these in a row, right? But, when in the 90s, there was the Schindler's List, there were all kinds of beautiful books about that time period, even with Del Toro, who I just absolutely love his videography. Pan's Labyrinth was based on that time period. And so we have it in history, but I feel like it's fading. What are you going to do, like a part 2? Are you going to turn it into a movie, a documentary? I mean, this is exciting.
Yeah, I would love to turn it into a movie. I would love Mel Brooks to star in it, put it out there in the universe. He would be great. I mean, he just can capture so much of his humor, captured really when I would watch my grandfather, and he remarried, and she was also a survivor, and just their interaction was so spot on. But one of the things, I had taken a lot of video with my grandfather when we were working on it. So I want to put together a video of him and I speaking as we're working on the book, so the kids can see him. And at the last few years of his life, he died 4 years ago at 94, but from age 90 to 93, we spoke together a number of times at schools, and the kids would run up to him after and wanted to shake his hand to meet this real living piece of history. And I'm every time somebody wants to speak about the book, I'm there. I go into schools, I do it Zoom, I go around the country, because it's important to keep these stories going, because there are only like 9 or 11 states that have history, that have the Holocaust, that has to be taught in schools. That's mandated. So many schools and states don't have it. So it's another piece of our history. It's like, are we just going to stop talking about slavery? No, it's a definite part of our history. And so was the Holocaust. And everybody should learn about it.
Well, I think at most it would be an honorable thing to keep the story going, and not in a negative or contrite way, but in a way in which it provides the value of what the people endured and the passion of trying to survive at a time where you were lied to. You were told to take off all your clothes to go take a shower with a group of people, and that shower was actually a gas chamber with thousands, hundreds of people, thousands of people, and they just threw bodies in ditches. I mean, it's just, whew, when you really get into the depths of the slaughter. It also reminds me of my foster father, who was a Vietnam vet. He was a helicopter pilot, and he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't talk about any of it, nothing, because it was so traumatic. So your grandfather being that brave and living that long, that must have been awesome for you.
It was. I mean, we were so close. He was like my best friend. The last number of years, I would go and take care of him, and we'd sleep in the same bed. I wanted to make sure he didn't get out, and I would help him. And we spent the days together, and we would just talk about anything. And, there were we shared so much. He never spoke about these stories with anyone except for me. So we shared a lot. And I remember there were moments when he would be talking, and it was, for many survivors, they took their own lives. Reliving it was almost as hard as actually surviving it the first time. And there would be moments when he would start to cry and he would be lost, you know, his eyes would glaze over, and he had to go back to that time, and he persevered. He was the strongest person I knew. And I remember stories where he said he'd heard about the gas chambers, and then there would be moments where he'd go in, and all of a sudden ice cold water would splash on them and he'd be relieved it was really a shower, even though it was freezing cold, that he was alive for another day. And as tough as some of the parts in the book are, it's ultimately about hope, because at the end of the day he survived, and it was about that perseverance to survive. And it makes, you know, I'm honored to be able to tell his story and to go into schools. And you know, there were so many kids who asked him after, do you still believe in God after all that? He said, I do, because God was looking after me. I survived. So he always had a positive outlook.
That's amazing. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. I mean, we're sheltered at home. Life at the beginning was kind of this new normal, and we didn't know what was going on, but, you know, it felt like a dream. And I was thinking about, I had a talk right at the beginning that was supposed to be for 150 people at an event, but we had to do it online. And it was about how at the beginning of the Holocaust, when everything was happening and they were probably thinking, is this real? Seeing people shot and everything taken away. It's how do you wrap your brain around that? And he was in this for 5 years. I mean,
What's amazing to me is how I always say you don't know what you don't know until you know, because life is a journey, it's an adventure. And until you come across stories like this or come across a movie or something that triggers a new understanding, we have a real spoiled life. Um, and so this pandemic, I think for me, has been really refreshing because I get to focus on all of that inter work that we don't get to do when we're busy, and repurposing the house and getting rid of the clutter and all the stuff that I haven't been able to do, right? So for me,
right.
I've enjoyed that space. But I, whew, you know, it's a great time to think and contemplate and be a part of a different way of looking at life. And in his shoes, he must have really had to hold on to some powerful dreams and powerful love for living, if that makes sense,
Absolutely.
to get through that. I mean, you know, we read the books about Nelson Mandela and how he turned around and really became introspective in his time period incarcerated. But you have to be incredibly strong. I mean, I'm a very strong woman, but I don't know if I'm that strong.
I know that's one of the questions I always ask students. You know, and I speak in New York City, and we're in New York City, especially these kids. I tell them, ask your parents, ask your grandparents. Everybody came from somewhere. Everybody had hardship, which is probably why they came to New York City. But you know, and I just lost my train of thought. But when you have this hardship, like there were so many times my grandfather said what helped him through those years was believing that one day he would have a wife and children to replace all those people who were killed in his family. I mean, sisters and brother and parents and cousins and aunts and uncles. And he just somehow persevered.
What is the largest takeaway that you can give our audience today in regards to such a powerful story? A great papa, he's my papa now. I'm kidnapped him.
We
Um,
would love you.
and perseverance. I mean, we really don't know where we're headed, and you were in New York, so really stark imagery that we have. Um, I remember September 11th, I was in Chicago, and I was in Michigan at the Omni. That's where I was staying. I was doing a big trade show, and they shut us down. And I'm used to the big city. I'm used to the noise and the chaos and the cluck, 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 you know, and it's just very busy and loud. The most eerie thing that I've ever heard in my life is a pigeon flapping its wings to the brooks across the street from the Omni Hotel that we were at, because we were shut down. And so that's the imagery that I get from New York right now. And it's powerful. I mean, September 11th was how long ago? And I still hear the echo. What do you recommend for people to keep in a higher headspace at this time? I mean, you know a lot.
Yeah, New York was pretty scary. I've been here for 2 weeks. So I was in New York for almost 2 months during it, and the silence was deafening, except you would hear the ambulances over and over. And it was really scary at first. And I remember 9/11, where the planes suddenly, there were no planes where I was living, and it was crazy. But, you know, I also teach a course on organizing to a lot of seniors. They're in their 80s, their 90s, some are in 103. A couple of them are Holocaust survivors. And they were saying, I've been through so much, and this is nothing compared to what I've been to. And I think it is scary because this is the unknown. None of us have been around in this. I mean, maybe a handful who are still alive from the Spanish flu, but um, not many. I don't, they're all elderly, but we don't know what's coming. But we have, like you said, we have so much. We can get food, we can be home, we have internet, we have connection. And it's to remember, I think it's almost a reminder of what is valuable in our life. And for me, it's just family. That's the bottom line. Everything else can go. It's family. And I know for my grandfather, who had nothing, at the very end, the last day, he found out he had a sister in Bergen-Belsen, and that was everything because he simply had nothing. And we can always replace our stuff. The economy has gotten a smackdown, but it'll bounce back, and we have to stay healthy, and we have to, just remember what's important to us. And it's hard. There are times where it gets scary, and you think staying home. You want to go out. The weather's getting nicer, and it's just being safe and respecting everybody. There's a lot of fear. And in New York, you see somebody walking by and they put on a mask, and it's like you feel offended, like, I don't have COVID. But you know what, it's not about you, it's about that person's fear, and it's about respecting that. And fear is real, and it's the unknown. But every day, just give yourself a goal, try to do something good for yourself. And remind yourself, if you have your health, then you are the luckiest person in the world.
I love it. So where do we find your book about Papa?
Amazon, of course, what Papa told me. You can go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. You can also go to my website, FeliceCohen.com.
And since you are like me in this beautiful space where you can pretty much hit the virtual world running, if that's a thing, that's actually a thing. Can you believe that's a thing? I mean, you've got to be around my age, so that's a thing. That's a new thing. Wow. Anyway, George Jetson, you are
Yeah.
available to pretty much do this for anybody, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I even do organizing with people on Zoom. You show me your closet because I can't go in there, and I'll tell you what to do. But I also talk about my grandfather in schools, in book clubs, in bookstores, settings, wherever. I mean, colleges, anything. Happy to.
I actually just did a video for a teacher whose class is kind of reluctant to read or write, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. So
Hmm.
before you leave me, after I close out, don't leave me, because I want to see if we can connect you, because I think that would be beautiful if you can connect the younger generation to the kind of writing that you do.
Happy to.
And that will hopefully spawn some more education in regards to the Holocaust, because that's a very integral part of our history, and I don't want it to be forgotten. Um, any last minute words, my friend?
No, just keep smiling. I mean, that's all you can do in the face of everything, and just keep smiling and hoping that this will be over soon.
Amen.
Yeah.
So you're watching Living and Thriving with Rustie, and this is my friend Felice, and she is in lovely Cape Cod, which, if you've ever been able to go up there, the history, the beauty, the dynamics of old colonialism, the beaches are beautiful. Too cold for this Florida girl, way too cold. I lived up there long enough to know I still can't swim up there. But it's beautiful, and she will be headed back hopefully to New York, living and thriving along the way. Her grandfather, Papa, has recently passed and left her a lifetime of stories and love. Ah, God, I love what I do. So some of the takeaways we've had from all of our guests from all over the world is prioritize not only your closet, not only your life, your inside too. And remember what's important, because things don't really matter. You know, we've had guests on the show where they were in the California wildfires and lost absolutely everything. And you rebuild, because that's what we do. We're tenacious, we're determined, we're exciting. Other things, find your passion. What sets your fire on soul? What sets your soul on fire? Boy, am I backwards today. I'm going to put on my shirt backwards for the next guest. What are you doing of service? You know, I'm huge about service. Check on your neighbors, mail out cards like I do, call your friends. I have 27 Scrabble games going on at once from all around the world with some of you guys. So you keep me busy, but this is what we do. Gratitude and blessings. Always, always sit and really look at your life, even if it's in chaos, even if it's a shit show, even if you are crying, because my belief is when you cry joy and you cry your history. The joy is you're still alive and your history is finally leaving you. Crying's good. Not all the time, not wallowing, but understand it's joy and history. And routines. Vacation time's over. I'm tired of seeing y'all in your 3-day-old t-shirt with spaghetti sauce all over it. Brush your teeth, brush your hair, and look like you're ready to grab the world by its balls and say, I'm here, I'm taking it. Reinventing yourself. This is a great time to do it. Loving yourself. And yes, it's a little deafening out, but you know what? Turn on some tunes, sing at the top of your lungs. Nobody's listening to you anyway, right? They're not. Just enjoy yourself. Have an extra cookie for me today, because you know I can't. I'm detoxing. Until next time, know that I love you. Know that you're beautiful. Be good to yourself. Be good to your neighbors. Smile, even though they can only see it in your eyes, but it's important right now. Till next time.